Hey everybody, welcome back to You in Media. It's a series about how we think about our mediated world. Today, we got puppies, football, horses, beer, and moms. It's what the USA and this episode are all about. I'm Noah Mintz, and we're talking about media literacy. It's a term people throw around a lot, but it's actually super important if you want to be an engaged and critical participant in your own life. Because this stuff is all around you, so you might as well think about it. The oldest meaning of the word literacy comes from one of Western society's oldest media, the written word. It means understanding letters, being able to read. When writing was the only way to communicate with people who weren't right there in front of you, reading was a really powerful skill. Before that, the important skill was being able to speak and understand and reproduce the language of the land, and being fluent in the customs of a society. That's what we might call cultural literacy. Anyway, then along came the incredible technological advances of the industrial era. Printing presses and steam power machines basically created a whole new society. Being able to read and write was no longer just a privileged skill, but a necessary tool for status and social mobility. In order to be an informed, active participant in the industrialized Western world, you needed to be able to read a newspaper or an instruction manual or a voting ballot. Now, literacy is practically a given. In the United States today, an estimated 99% of the population can read and write. Granted, that means there are around 3 million people in this country who are illiterate, and that's a big problem. But the fact remains that we are a largely literate society, at least when it comes to reading words. But there's so much more out there now than just the written word. So many other media through which we communicate. Since the earliest 20th century, broadcast or mass media have been on the rise. Radio and film, then television, and now the internet have complicated and changed the way that we talk to each other. Of course, reading TV and movies isn't that hard, realistically, as long as you have the access, which would be a TV in your house and money to go to the movies, some kind of radio, and the ability, the language to understand what you're hearing and seeing, and the necessary vision and hearing abilities. You can kind of just sit there and let it all wash over you. You don't have to know how to spell to listen to the radio, and you don't have to read to watch TV. It's easy to let these images and sounds just flood your mind and to take them for granted. We might call this passive consumption. But to be truly media literate, you have to be able to read those texts, and by text I mean any set of signs that convey a message. In order to read them more critically, you have to read between the lines, like you might read a book in your English class, for example. You have to look at what point the text is trying to make and how it makes that point. What's the motivation? What are they saying? How are they saying it? And what do they mean by what they're not saying? Being media literate means being an active and empowered member of the world. If you've ever tried to help your grandpa upload photos to Facebook, you've seen how technological illiteracy might get in the way of communicating with other people. But if you can't also read media and read them critically, you're at risk of being duped and bamboozled, swindled, taken advantage of. And beyond that, being media literate means that you have a wider array of lenses to examine the world around you, the content that surrounds you every day. You can understand messages more deeply, and maybe enjoy them more. Either way, you can take a step back and look at things a little more critically. Not that any of this is news to you. No one is truly a passive observer. Media literacy is something that everyone in our culture has to some degree or another. What I'm trying to do here is just to give you a vocabulary and a set of tools to help you do it a little more easily and maybe skillfully. So how do we go about a critical analysis of a media message? The first thing to do is to pick a text. We're going to take a look at an advertisement because ads tend to lend themselves really well to this sort of thing. They're short, they're everywhere, and they have a very clear motivation. I personally try to avoid advertising as much as possible. So when I wanted to pick an advertisement to analyze, I just Googled best ads of 2015, and this was the first thing that came up.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And I would walk 500 more just to be in the middle of the 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
Okay, so what did we just see? We've got the cutest freaking puppy in the whole world, and he's friends with the big beautiful horse, and they get separated from the dude in the baseball cap, and the dude's sad, and the horse is sad, and the puppy is scared, and he's running home, but then there's a big scary wolf that wants to eat the puppy, and then it almost does, and then the horse breaks free with its horse squad and goes and saves the puppy, and then the dude is happy, and they're all hanging out in a barn? Cool. So, what's really going on here? This is an advertisement, after all, so they're trying to sell us something. But what does this puppy have to do with beer? How's a horse going to get me to buy Budweiser? But if the ad's job is to convince me, how is it doing that? There's a lot of different angles we can attack this thing from. We have to look at the whole process of how the ad got from one place to another, from the Budweiser ad people to when it reaches us as viewers, and how we interpret it when we see it. A lot of money went into this ad, so we can only assume that a lot of thought went into it too, probably. Therefore, nobody can tell me that I'm reading too much into things, so I don't want to hear it, comment trolls. Alright, so we've got the Anheuser-Busch InBev company, which owns Budweiser and wants to put out an ad. Their goal is to motivate people to buy their product, their beer. It turns out that the best way to do this is not always just to say, buy our beer. In fact, I think it's safe to assume that that doesn't really work very well at all. People figured out a long time ago that there are other ways to convince people to buy something than just to tell them directly to do it. This is where the advertisers come in. They're the professionals who come up with this stuff, and they're very good at it. They create associations with the product or the company, or they craft a sort of mythology about what this product is and who buys it and what those people are like. This is called branding. It's selling a brand, an image, rather than a product itself, and it works. That's why a lot of ads you see today make little to no direct reference to the product that they're selling. In the case of this Lost Dog ad, no one tells you to drink Budweiser. In fact, there's barely any beer in the commercial at all. Right at the very end, if you can manage to tear your eyes away from the unbearably cute little dog, the dude in the baseball cap is holding a bottle. But that's it. This ad isn't about beer, it's about animals? Friendship? Best buds. See what they did there? They're associating the company, Bud, with the concept of platonic bonding, buddies. That's branding, and it works. So we've got a brand and we've got advertisers. That means we've got a message and we've got communicators. So let's look at how they transmit the message. The carrier of the message, the thing that gets it from point A to point B, that's the medium. So in a media studies video series, we should probably take a look at that, I guess. In this case, the medium is actually a sort of hybrid between two media. First and foremost, it's a television advertisement. It aired for the first time on national TV during the
Super Bowl 49.
Super Bowl in 2015. But these days, TV ads don't restrict themselves just to the airwaves. They also become online advertisements and get tacked onto the beginnings of videos on YouTube and Hulu and ESPN or whatever. They even become their own little entities, posted on YouTube where they can be watched and shared all over the web. In a lot of ways, the two separate media don't make that much of a difference for the ad. They both activate the same senses in the viewer, sight and sound. They make use of visuals and cute animals and sentimental music to communicate with us and affect us. The content, of course, is the same too. Whether we watch this ad on TV or online, we're still seeing the same ad. The same puppy and the same horse. If, for example, this were going to be turned into a print ad or a radio spot, they'd have to change some things, right? But no modification had to be made to adapt the TV commercial to an online video or vice versa. But there are a lot of subtle differences between how the TV ad and the online video work. First of all, the pace of the ad is different. On TV, it's played only once, and the speed and timing is all controlled by the advertisers who created it and the networks who are broadcasting it. Online, though, you can replay it when it's done, and you can skip the scary parts if you want, or stop it when it gets to the red advertising screen with the logo at the end if you really want, or you can just replay it over and over and over and over. Not that I did that or anything. The pace of the ad is much more in your hands. Both of these media have advantages for the advertiser. On TV, there's a lot more control over how and when the ad is viewed. They can play other Budweiser ads before it, which they actually did, to kind of prime the audience, get them ready for what they're going to see. On the other hand, the YouTube video gives control to the viewer. If you can play around with it and replay the parts you like, pause it on stills of the puppy wagging its tail, it might feel a lot more personal and like it belongs to you. You might also spend more time watching it, which is good for Budweiser because exposure is key in advertising. Of course, the distinctions between TV ads and online videos are kind of blurred by DVR programs like TiVo. You can pretty much do all the stuff with your TV that you can do on YouTube. Plus, the TiVo remote makes the fun little booping sounds. Okay, so what else is different? Think about time and place, the physical context you're in when you see the ad. We'll call this the reception environment. This was a Super Bowl ad.
Super Bowl 49.
So a lot of people saw this on TV while surrounded by their friends and family, or at a sports bar surrounded by a lot of other fans. If the Super Bowl was already about bonding and maybe drinking, then this is a great environment for the ad. Friends drinking beer, isn't that exactly what the ad portrays? It's also a narrative about an underdog and about coming together as a team. I'm not much of a sports guy, but that seems like a lot of the same stuff that people like about football. Online, you can see it anywhere at any time. The advertisers can't guarantee the same kind of conducive physical reception environment, but they can be pretty sure that the virtual environment will involve personal relationships. These videos end up getting shared on social media networks like Facebook, and that's a community of its own. If you're scrolling down your Facebook feed and you see this ad, isn't it also surrounded by friends? Even if you can't go to the bar and order a round for your buddies, you can still share Budweiser with your buds. And who are the people doing the sharing anyway? While beer usually markets primarily to men, it turns out that on Facebook and other social media networks, the people who are doing most of the sharing are women. And not just any women, it's moms in particular. There's been a lot of interesting writing about this phenomenon online lately. You can read a really clear and insightful look at it here. But basically, the people who produce viral content have given up on cat memes and law speak and whatever else was used to go around on the internet. And the reason for that is that moms don't care about that stuff. And moms are the new tastemakers or whatever. Moms like funny pictures of babies and heartwarming stories about overcoming obstacles and, well, videos of puppies. Budweiser knows where this video is going to go, and if they want to reach the widest audience possible, which they do, they have to make it appealing to a certain audience. And that audience is your mom. Meanwhile, on TV, the content doesn't really dictate how many people see it. They're not relying on people sharing the ad, they're simply relying on people watching TV in the first place. The best way to reach an audience as an advertiser on television is to advertise during a really popular event.
Super Bowl 49.
The Super Bowl, for example. In 2015, 114.4 million people watched the Super Bowl. That makes it the most watched television program ever, unless it was topped by the 2016 Super Bowl. That's like a third of everyone in the entire United States. So if you're a big company like Budweiser that wants to advertise to a lot of people all at once,
Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl is a pretty good venue for it. That's why advertisers spend tons of money to get a spot on air during the event. A 30-second ad cost $4.5 million in 2015. That's $150,000 per second, you guys. That's why you don't see cheap ads from small businesses and car dealerships during the Super Bowl. This is the major leagues of advertising, the Super Bowl of commercials. In fact, some people watch just for the ads and they mute their TVs during the game. So they've pretty much got the audience already, just by virtue of airing during the biggest television event of the year. The only effect that the content has on viewership here is making sure that people don't change the channel when the ad is on, or mute their TVs. And the puppy just about takes care of that. Look how cute he is. They've even dealt with the competition from the Puppy Bowl, which airs on Animal Planet at the same time as the Super Bowl. Seriously, a heartwarming narrative and interesting music is enough to keep people tuned in. But what does the audience do with the ad now that they're watching it? How does the viewer interpret and make meaning of the advertisement? Because as much as we might think that the people who make the ads decide what it says and what it means, it's actually the viewer that makes the majority of the meaning. So how do people draw meaning from the Budweiser ad? Since there's such a huge, wide viewership, there's no single viewer and no single meaning. I might watch it and start crying in a coffee shop, and you might see it and laugh at how outlandish it is. As much appeal as this ad might have for a range of people, it's important to think about what it might mean to different audiences. First off, let's look at who's in the ad. Aside from the puppy, who's so cute he'll burn your eyes out, there's a white male farmer from a rural area and his really fancy horses. This is a guy that not everyone can relate to. I, for one, don't wear baseball caps. I'm also from a city, so this farmer's rural lifestyle doesn't actually look like my own. On the other hand, he is a white American male, and so am I. This aspect of representation, being able to see people who look like you on a screen and in books, it's super important. It's so important, in fact, that I'm devoting a whole other episode to it, and you can watch that later. So hang tight for that. In the meantime, though, just because someone can't relate to the guy in the ad doesn't mean that it isn't effective, or that the viewer can't make some kind of meaning from it. Being a critical reader of a mediated message, like being a critical reader of words, means looking deeper than what's on the surface. Like reading a book in your English class, you have to look for hidden symbols, hidden messages, encoded meanings. Fancy people like this French dude, Roland, he talks about the difference between denotation and connotation. Denotation is what the literal meaning of something is. For example, the word chicken denotes a flightless bird that some people like to eat. But if someone calls you chicken, that means something else entirely, right? The connotation of the word is something negative, a coward. So when I say, "What are you, chicken?" I'm not literally asking if you were poultry, even if that's what the word denotes. To put it another way, the denotation is the literal layer, the meaning of the images and the words that are beyond our control. In the case of the Budweiser ad, the story and all of the images and sounds on the screen were crafted by the producers. They control the denotation. But the making of connoted meaning is sort of a group effort. Connotation comes from everything around us, the whole culture, as well as our own personal experiences. So while the people who made the advertisement were definitely aware of what the connotations might be, and certainly used them to their own advantage, the meaning isn't fully formed until we see it and interpret it through our own set of connotations, which are all slightly different. So the guy in the ad, he isn't just a white, male, rural, young farmer. That's the denotation, but the connotation is something more. He's the wholesome, all-American, salt-of-the-earth everyman. He's the boy next door, and he's your dad. He's what this country stands for. He's me, and he's you. The horse, of course, is only a barnyard animal, but it connotes an air of elegance, freedom, loyalty, conquering the great unknown. This isn't just a horse, either. It's a Clydesdale horse. These are fancy purebreds, and they've been associated with the Budweiser brand for almost 100 years. In fact, the first time they were used for promoting Budweiser was in 1933, when Prohibition was repealed and alcohol was legal again. Budweiser hitched a bunch of these horses to a carriage and went around delivering free beer to people. They even went to the White House to bring legal booze to Franklin Roosevelt. These Clydesdales aren't just horses. They're a celebration of the American way, and the American way is drinking Budweiser. And finally, there's the puppy. That intolerably adorable puppy. The puppy denotes a lost juvenile canine who manages to find its way back to a barn where it lives. But we all know that a puppy is more powerful than that. A puppy connotes purity, innocence, youth, love, and friendship. Puppy love, puppy dog eyes, man's best friend. Those are the connotations of a puppy. When the rugged yet clean-cut farmer man loses his puppy, he isn't just mourning the loss of a misplaced animal. He has lost his innocence and his humanity. It's one of the biggest fears about growing up. The puppy connotes youth, and now it's gone. And the only thing that will bring it back is, you guessed it, Budweiser. Do you see how ridiculous this is? You might think I'm crazy or that I'm reading too much into this, but it really does work. The company didn't shell out literally millions of dollars in airtime and who knows how much in production costs for nothing. Advertisers and marketers have got this down to a science, and they know what they're doing. They're trying to convince you to spend money on their product, to buy into their brand. Basically, they're trying to control you. And if you take these images and messages at face value, it's probably going to work. Being media literate means having the tools to question things. It means always interrogating motive, production, process, distribution, reception, connotation, denotation. It means looking deeper, probing further, and above all, asking questions. Because practically everything we come into contact with, whether it's an advertisement, a video game, or a magazine, or another person, it's mediated somehow. Understanding that gives you the power to be in more control of yourself and to be less at the mercy of this amazing beast of heavenly creation. Look at this puppy. Alright gang, so that's all the time we've got for today. If you want to know more about anything we talked about today, be sure to check out the links in the description below or leave a comment. I'll be back soon with another exciting episode of You in Media. Tune in next time. I'll see ya.